What's up, guys? It's your boy Henry again, and today I'm bringing to you guys a very interesting tutorial. And in this very tutorial, we're going to learn how to process payment with Stripe in a REST API environment. Alright, you agree with me that modern applications today are actually adapting the use of APIs a lot. And so for that reason, we'll see how we can integrate a third-party API, which is our Stripe payment API, with our own private API. Alright, so we'll be doing this with the Django REST framework. Alright, guys, so hit the subscribe button, guys. I really need your subscriptions, and also give this video a thumbs up and pin a very simple React front end to actually test our payment processing. I also will be implementing webhook to fulfill customers' need once they finish the payment, so that they know they have access to the product they paid for. Alright, guys, so that's what we'll be doing for this tutorial. I've already had a basic Django application set up. I created a virtual environment, installed the Django REST framework, and also installed the Django course header. Created a very simple Django project called Stripe_RESTful, and open it in Visual Studio Code. You can see the settings file. I've already added the REST API, the REST_framework, and the REST payment, which is our application, the app that we just created, the Django app, and the course header. Alright, these are the basic setup that I've done. We kick off from here. So heading straight to our model, we'll create a very simple light model for our product. That's a product that we want to sell to the customer. Alright, in here we have a very simple product model. A product that has a name, has a price, and also have a product image to contain a very simple image. Then we have a book_URL. Alright, so the product we want to sell in this application is an ebook. Alright, so once the customer fulfill the payment, we are going to send the ebook URL, that's the URL to download the ebook, through email to the customer. We'll be using webhook for that. Alright, so this is a simple model. So let's quickly register this model in our admin. So let's save this. We'll go to admin.py. Alright, so register the product model. So before we quickly set up the media route for that our product URL and product image. For this product image to actually work, we need to sort up the. Alright, so this is the media and URL, and this is the media route, which is our base directory underscore product. So let's save this. So we'll quickly go to our base URL.py file. In here, we'll quickly go to import some few themes for us to actually set up the media URL. So in here, we quickly import settings from django.conf, and for django.conf.url.set and static, we import static. Alright, so in here, we'll just add a path by saying we're adding into this URL pattern static. We have the settings of media URLs and document root, which is the settings.media root. Alright, so that's all about that. We saved it. Make migration. Alright, so let's create our super user now. Alright, we have our super user created successfully. Let's run our server. Alright, we're heading over to the admin login. So we'll quickly log in as our admin. We have our login. So we'll quickly create a very simple product. Just one. So we add product, choose a name, just call it REST API Design Pro Notes. We choose a price, let's give it $20. Let's choose a very simple image from our file system. So you ought to contain the URL to download the book, so we just put a fake URL. Alright, so this is not a real URL, so we can save this now. One product created, that's fine. So let's go back to our code editor. Let's create our simple serializer. Alright, so inside our app, our REST app, we just create a simple file called serializer.py. Import from REST framework. Alright, to import serializer, and we also need to import our model. So here we just create a simple product serializer. Alright, so in this serializer, we want to serialize all the feeds from our product model. Alright, that's all. We save this. So we head over to our view.py, where we're going to create our very first simple endpoint. Let's use a class-based view. Let's make some imports first. We need to import from REST framework .views API view. Also, we're going to import the retrieve API view. API view, alright. We create a simple view called product preview. In here, we also need to import the product and also the product serializer. Alright, so having done that, we just create a simple view, which is a simple retrieve view. Serializer class specified. Permission class is going to be permission.allow any. So we also need to import permission. So that's all. So let's create a URL for this. So inside our app, we're going to create a URL.py file. Alright. We can save this, and heading back to our project URL, we just create a simple path. From here, we also need to import include. Alright, you can save this. Alright, we just quickly spin up a React app so that we can implement the front end for us to actually see our products. Alright, so I just quickly create a simple React app called Stripe front end, and we're gonna go into that now so we can create a simple front end for us to actually see our products. We open up the React app in our code editor. Let's quickly clean up this React app. We can take out the logo, we don't need all this. So here we just create a very simple component. Alright, so this is a component that we are going to fetch our products from and display for the user to actually check out or make the purchase. But before we do that, first of all, let's quickly install the Reactor Dom because we'll be needing it. So npm install Reactor Dom. Here we're going to fetch our product from our API backend. So for us to do that, first of all we need to import use state and use effects. Once we import that, we also need to import the from Reactor Dom. So in here we need to create our first of all basic product state, which is the name, which is the name of our product, and we have an image, which is the product image, and we have the price. Alright, so these are our default states for our product, and we also need the function that will fetch the product from our API. Alright, so we've not handled costs, we need to handle costs. If not, our API request will not work. So we'll do that shortly. But before then, let's just quickly map out first we need to get the ID of the product. Remember, we are retrieving a single product from our API. So we'll be getting the ID from the use parent. This will give us the ID. So we won't get the ID now because we've not provided this component a URL Alright, so we'll quickly save this. So let's quickly set up the rat for this. So heading over to app.js, first of all, let's quickly import React at the top here. Rats. Once we have this import in here, we just quickly set up a simple React rats. So once we have this, we want to render the component, but in this case it will be element. That's what the new version of Reactor Dom provides for us. So we use L. So Visual Studio Code auto import it for me. So you need to import it in your own case. So let's quickly close the final. Alright, so it means once we go to this product ID, it should render this component. That's for this. So we'll save this, and then here we have our product ID stored in this product ID. So here we need to make our API request. So we really defined a simple product get product. You can call it any name you want. Right. Oh, this should be const, not def. Sorry, this is not a Python code, it's a JavaScript code, so it should be const, and then we need to make this an async function. What we want to do, we want to make our API request in here, so we're going to say let, and we're going to call this variable, let's call it response, await response using the await keyword. So we're going to be using the JavaScript built-in fetch API. You can use Axios if you want. So since this project is kind of light, we're going to use the fetch, and this expect our URL. So we'll use backtick to pass in our URL. So our endpoint is http:/127 products. So this will return a promise for us, so we can get that promise in a variable called data, which is going to be our response. And we also need to await this. Alright, so let's check our data by just simply running the console.log. Get product function is going to be called in our use effect. So when the page just load, that's when the component mounts. So we're going to use the use effect. Alright, so in here we're just going to simply call the get product. Alright, so that's that. So this need to depend on our parameter. Let's take this one step up. .id as the parameter for this to run. So we can try our code and see what we get from our response first. So we save this and run our code and run our server for me. Alright, heading to our browser, and we have our app loaded already. So we can just go to /1, and nothing is showing up. So what are we actually getting? Oh, you're getting some errors. So let's check. When error, say uncaught error, use rats as maybe use only in the context. Oh, that's true. We missed something in our rats. So if we head to API apps, not app.js, index.js, so we need to import the browser router. Alright, so we need to wrap our whole app around with that. Now our app should work properly. So if we head back to our browser, we can see we are seeing the product of Dave. So let's quickly just refresh this. We're actually getting our components. So let's check. Oh, we're getting access block. Alright, so I thought we've handled costs. Let's head to our backend and see if we've handled. We only installed it and added to our installed app, so we didn't do the settings. So we need to quickly break up the cost settings. this into our backend so I can use it. Just quickly add the cost middleware just above the common middleware. So, alright, and we need to set the cost allow origin. So cost allow origin, we want to allow this origin, which is our front end origin. Alright, so I think that's all about the cost. I think we just need to restart our server. Alright, so once that restarts, we can refresh. You can see we are getting our products. Alright, so you can see we are getting the product ID, the name, the price, and so this we can actually display this information in our front end. So let's go back to the front end. Now instead of consoling log it, we want to pass this into our state. So that's that. So we have it in our state now. Let's go to always check which is our prod. That's our state now, where we save this and we come back and we let this. You can see this was our previous state before the API call was made. So if we have a loading component, we can set that once the state is empty. So here we are having the product in our state. Alright, so we have here. So now we can create a simple layout to display this product. So I won't waste your time by typing out the layout for you to see. You can build yours. It's very simple. So I'm going to just grab the code for our previous layout and just display it here. Alright, so these are simple, very simple layouts. We are using, we have a simple container, we have a card, and which displays the product image from our state product image dot. If you check back, you can see it's already rendering out already. Alright, so with the name, the price, and the product image, so we can see our it's already rendering out. So in our CSS, it's just a simple CSS, a container CSS to put the whole card at center, and we have our simple card. Alright, so you can see the simple card here. Then we just give, let's give this, if we give this card, and we have the card image, we have the card button. Alright, so this gives us the style for this very button. That's this button. Yeah, I know it's not the best CSS style you can see, but that's not the point. So click this now, it will not send any request. You see we are getting supposed to send a post request, it cannot post /1 because we've not actually handled that already. So that's what Stripe is going to do for us. So we head to Stripe and see how we can process this very payment, this post request. Right, it's time to start working with the Stripe API. Alright, so the Stripe API is a payment platform, we all know that, and what we're going to do is we are going to be making a post request to the Stripe API to create a checkout session. Alright, so we're doing that from our backend, and then you may assume, why don't we just make the request from our front end to Stripe directly, or talking from our front end directly to Stripe? And that you can do, but if you read the Stripe documentation, it advises us to actually create an endpoint in our backend that makes the request on behalf of the front end for security reasons. So the mechanism is our front end to send a post request to our backend, which kind of triggers a post request directly to Stripe. So over to the Stripe documentation, accepting online payment, which is a one-time payment. Stripe offers us two ways we can do that. We can use the Stripe pre-built checkout page, alright, which is very simple to do, which is what we'll be doing in this very video, or we can use the custom payment flow. In our next video, we'll look at how we can use the custom payment flow. That's a bit difficult. And then if you look at the setup here, they give us an example, but in this example they are using Flask as the backend and React as the front end. So we'll see how we can convert this to Django. So they asked us to set up a server. It said we need to install the Stripe Python package. We'll do that now shortly. with the pip. So once we install that, we need to create an endpoint in our server. Say add an endpoint to the server that creates a checkout session. Alright, so we'll do that shortly. And here we need to define the product that we want to sell. So let's see how we'll do that now. So let's head over to our backend and we need to install Stripe. So we'll go and so our Stripe Python package has finished installing. And second thing you need to do is you need to go to the Stripe platform. If you don't have an account with them, create an account. It's free to create an account. If you already have an existing account, you can just sign into your account to get your API keys. Alright, so that's very easy to do. So get your API keys, your public key and your secret keys. We needed them, so you put them inside your. You see, I will set up an environment variable also. So I will set them in our settings and access them in our app. So aside that, let's views, and in here we're going to create the endpoint. I'm going to make this a class space view. So this is going to be an API view. And this view just wants just a post request. Alright, so you can either get the product that we want to make payments for, either by sending the product ID from our front end as part of the post data. So I can grab that in our request of data here and use that to query for the product we want to pay for, which is like the example that Stripe give. If you look at Stripe example here, they're actually getting the price ID, which is referred to as the product you want to sell, as the ID of the product from our Stripe backend. So if you look at this Stripe example that I give here, they are kind of creating a product database inside Stripe, right, which contains the products that they want to pay for. So we are identifying the product by the product ID, which is coming from Stripe. So that's the example they give. So in this case, in our own case, we can either send that as one, or we can get the product ID from our URL, which is very easy for us to do. Our key, which we're going to be passing to the ID. So once we have the ID from that, we can create our try and accept block. We want to return something else. So first of all, we need to try and get the product by saying the product I want to pay for. Want to get it from our own database, no longer Stripe database. So product.objects, get from our URL. Alright, so I guess you understand what we are doing here. So you either send the product ID along with the request, or you get it from the URL. So that's the point here. So once we have our products that we want to sell, we can create a function which will just say create a variable called checkout, which equals to Stripe. We need to import Stripe. We don't have Stripe yet, so we need to import Stripe. Alright, so we have Stripe imported. Checkout. No session. So, and secondly, we need API key. If not, this will not work. So if you check documentation here, you can see where you need to bring in your API key here. This is the example I give. So here I'm going to import from Django.conf. I'm going to import settings. Settings by saying settings dot. Alright, so what you do, you need to get your own secrets and public key, put them in your settings file. Alright, so in our settings file, just below here, we can set that in. So those will come in here. So get yours from your dashboard and place them in here. So we'll save this, get that. So we'll say stripe.api key equals to settings dot stripe secret key. So we'll get that on our settings. That's that. So here we create a session by saying create a checkout session stripe does checkout the session dot create, and in here we need to bring in some parameters, and one of it is the line arrays of an object. Alright, so here we need to provide the price data, alright, that we are using. So now look at the example they give. They say defining a product you want to sell. These are products you want to sell. So you can see the predefined price ID. This is coming from our Stripe backend, so this is like a demo they are using. But if we are bringing our own, since we are bringing our own price and our product price and what we want to sell from our own backend, you use the price data. All right, so Stripe also give us a way for us to pass in the product information manually rather than getting the price ID. Take the line items, parameters that these line items can take. You can take in the ID of the price or plan object. This is if it's hosted on Stripe, or we can use the price underscore data. All right, so you can see line items under the dot price data. It says data used to generate a new price object in line. Here you can see price data has its own parameter. We can specify the currency and we can specify the price. All right, so if you read this documentation, you can see the units. You can specify price data dot unit price, and they have the product data. So we'll see how we use this manually now in our own code. So let's in here we want to specify a price data, and this we specify the currency, and also we can specify the unit price, its amount, sorry, dot price as our product of price which we are getting from our own database. But this we need to convert it to integer to avoid any invalid price parameter. And in Stripe it's also always in cent, so we are advised to times it by 100. And secondly, we have the products with the product data. All right, the product data actually contains information, personal information about the product, like the product name, and that pass description if there's a description for the product. Maybe if there's an hosted image for the product, you can also pass in the image for the product. So the product data information is what will be displayed in the Stripe hosted and checkout page. That's a preview checkout page with the name alone. All right, so once we have that, we need to set the quantity. Aside the price data, we have quantity. We set this to 1 by default. So once we have that, we need to set other parameters aside the line items. We have the mode of payment. Sorry, keep getting errors. In this case, we want to use payment. If it's a subscription payment, you specify your subscription. So this should be outside the line item mode of payment. So aside the line items, specify the mode of payment, and also we can specify maybe meta data. Then maybe we can just put the product. All right, so next we need to set the sources URL. So URL and also the cancel URL. All right, so since we are going to be using React in our front end, we are going to set the sources URL and the cancel URL in our settings file. So we'll do that shortly. So we just get that from settings. All right, same thing for cancel URL equals true. All right, so we've not set the site URL. We'll do that now. All right, so that's for that. So once we have our checkout section, we need to return a redirect to the sources to a URL that Stripe will give us through the session. So we just return that Stripe is going to give us. So we redirect to this URL, which will be provided to us by Stripe. If you check back the documentation, you can see here where you redirect to the checkout session.url. So this is the URL that will take us to the hosted checkout page that will actually give us a form to retrieve payment information like your credit card information. So that URL, because this payment page is hosted by Stripe, so we'll redirect to the URL. All right, so that's that. So once we do that, in case there's any error, so we need to cache the session that we to return a response with a message saying something went wrong while creating Stripe session. And the error, we need to set the error to the session error, and the status we just put in 500. All right, so that's, we need to import this response, which is coming from REST API, our checkout session created, endpoint created. We need to set the success URL and cancel URL in our settings file. So heading to our settings file, just below here, React endpoint, which is going to be localhost. Right. So this will be our site URL. So now we need to bring this into our URL.py file. So let's grab this. Alright, so once we have our URL set, we can save this. So we also need to bring our public and secret key. I'll do that now. So we need to make a request, a post request to this endpoint from our front end. So let's go out to our front end and do that. Front end, we variable called API. Then inside our form, this action is what is going to call the create checkout session endpoint. So in here, we change this to, if I want to use backticks URL. So once we have the API URL, we go to slash, which we already have. So we just pass in the ID of the product, which we're going to call prod.id. Alright. Submit button is clicked. We will run the action, which we actually make a post request to, because we are setting the method to post to this endpoint for us. So we need to put the slash here. Alright, so that's our endpoint. So once we do that, we need to create a simple message component to actually render the message that will be coming from our response. That's the Stripe response. So inside our component, we just create a simple, it's just going to receive a props of message. And here, we're just going to have a simple paragraph. And need to maybe save this. Now we have this call. We need a way to actually check if the response has gone to, is a success or is a failure, for us to render the message. Alright, so inside our app.js, in here we create, bring in the use state. Okay, so in here we're going to create a very simple state, which we're going to call message. Alright, so we're going to call the use effect. Inside the use effect, we are going to check for the parameter that is passed into our URL after the request. Alright, so the parameter, which is either the success URL or the cancel URL. If the payment was successful, we have the success parameter passed into our URL. If it's cancelled or there's any failure, we have that cancel parameter passed. And in here, we just want to get the window. So after having this, we need to check if this query parameter, if it's a success, so we'll say if. All right. So if we have a success parameter passed in, we want to set the set message, and here we just want to pass a very simple message saying order completed. I know this is not the best way to handle this, but for the purpose of our tutorial, this will work. Alright, order completed. Let's say I construct a better message. Alright, so once we set that, then if for any reason, if the query parameter with another message this time, so that's that, and this need to run. Don't do now. Instead of us running at this to check if we have a message, and if we have a message, we want to display the message component. Alright, we want to render our route. Alright, so we just bring this. Then if we have a message, we want to bring in the message component, the props of message. Right, so if there's no message, we direct you back to the product page. So that we do works. So heading back to checkout page, I just noticed that the product prod object does not have ID because this is our current state. So we need to pass the ID which we are getting from our params. That's the use params. I think is here, which is product ID. This is what we are supposed to pass into our endpoint. Okay, so that's fixed that. So I think we are good to go. So you don't know where to access your API key in Stripe. So once you log into the Stripe dashboard, you head over to developer. Under developer, you see your API keys. Another important thing is maybe when you did everything right and for some reason you are getting errors and you can't figure out what's the cause of the error, you can also check your logs here. Alright, sometimes some of the errors may be coming from Stripe, so you can see the logs to check and see what it is. If we head over to our product page and we just refresh. Alright, so let's try and check out now. So if we click the checkout button, you can see it's reloading. And beautiful. You see we are in the Stripe checkout page. You can see the name of our product is here and the price is here. So if we have any other kind of image or description, it will be displayed at this part of the screen. But in here we can test, and then if we can make payment right now. So we have a test card provided by Stripe which we can use. First of all, let's just put the test email name on the card. You can put improvement. So if you click pay, let's see, it's processing. Alright, you can see we have a successful payment, and you can see order completed. You will receive an email shortly with your order. So that means our payment was successful. So if we head over to our Stripe dashboard and we go to payment to see, you can see our recent payment, which of $20, and you can see we are getting payment is complete, successful, and we can see the customer email, which is the email we provided. So our payment was successful. That's fine. It means our payment is working very well. So what we need to do next is, how do we fulfill this order? After completing the payment, what next? So if you head over back to the documentation, you can see you scroll down to haven't tried these cards. You can also try it for decline, a case where the payment is unsuccessful, so that you see if you can get the cancel page URL. Then after that, you can see they'll give us the option to customize the checkout page. You can do that, and auto task collection, you can also do that. But where I'm interested in is the fulfillment. All right. This is the fulfillment. It says set up a webhook to fulfill orders after a payment succeeds. Webhook are the most reliable way to handle business critical logic. Alright, so that's what we're going to do now. After we finish the payment, we need to set up a webhook for us to listen for payment successful and probably send an email to the customer or do any other kind of update on our database. Maybe if we have an other database and maybe some values that we need to update after the payment was successful, we have to do that in the webhook endpoint. So now we're going to see how we can set up a webhook, and the best way and the way provided by Stripe for us to test out webhook locally on our own server on local host is the use of the Stripe CLI, right? So if you read this guide, you see in this guide you will learn how to receive an event notification when a customer pays you, handle the event, use Stripe CLI to quickly test your new event handler. Alright, so what this is all about is when the payment is successful, Stripe will send us an event. Alright, we send a request to our endpoint, which we're going to create, which is our webhook endpoint, with the successful event. So we are going to listen for that event. If we get a successful event, we want to perform some certain options. But if we get maybe a failed event, we also want to perform maybe some other options. So that is what this webhook is all about. So it's Stripe actually sending us a request, which refers to as the event notification. So first we need to install the Stripe CLI, which we'll be using to test our web. Alright, I've already installed myself, but for you, if you don't have it installed, just follow the installation guideline for different operating systems. If you're using Mac, using Windows, if you open this guideline in a new page, you see to actually install it for your different operating system. This page and see how you can install it. So once you finish installing it, you can log in. You can perform any actions that you normally perform through your dashboard, like logging into your Stripe CLI. So we see how we can do all that now. Status. Alright, so once we hit this, you can hear, once you see all services are online, means our CLI is working fine. Alright, that's good. So if we head next is to create our event handler. Alright, so one thing you should take note of when creating your event handler is this event handler endpoint should be the barest simple endpoint ever. And another thing is we are going to be using the pure Django view. We are not going to be using an API view. I will tell you why shortly, why we can't use an API view, because I tried that and I encountered a lot of issues which took me time to figure out. So I'll tell you the reason why you can't use an API endpoint. So just see the example they give us here. We need to create an API endpoint, and this endpoint need to be a free endpoint. No permissions should be hindering the request, because Stripe is the one sending us a request. We're not the one sending requests to Stripe. So we can just simply grab this and bring endpoint. So we can call it alright, so we need to import this CRS exempt for you to be able to make post requests, for Stripe to be able to make post requests to this endpoint. So we need to exempt any kind of CRF token authorization stuff, and we need the payload. This payload is the event that Stripe is sending to us is going to be stored in this payload. Alright, so now this payload needs to be in the purest form and in a raw form, a raw data form. It don't need to be in a JSON format or from Stripe. We're going to print out this payload first. But first of all, let's quickly import this HTTP and import this exempt. So we head over to. Alright, so once we have this imported, so this endpoint, we want to see what the payload is. We want to print out the payload. So let's register this endpoint, the webhook endpoint. So we save this. So coming back to CLI, we need to provide a way for Stripe to listen for that for us to listen for an event from Stripe and attach the events to that endpoint. So if you head back to our URL, you can see how Stripe gives us. It says To run your server, you say stripe listen dash dash forward to followed by the endpoints to our webhook handler. Alright, so let's quickly do that now. If we that we just created. So once we have this, we can quickly run this. Alright, you can see it's ready. So you're using Stripe Cellular version. Say your webhook sign-in secret. We'll make use of this sign-in secret later on, but you can see that it's ready and listening for webhook for this endpoint. So any event notification that is coming from Stripe will be sent to this endpoint. So that's what this is. So we have our webhook event listener. So let's head back to Stripe and make that same payment again. Let's repeat our payment process one more time. Alright, so let's try and make payment one more time. So if you click checkout, this take us out. So let's provide any, so let's make the payment again. So if we click pay, alright, so we have a successful payment. So if you head back to our event, you can see we are receiving payment intents created. We have receiving also another event called payment intents succeed, and we are receiving checkout session complete. These are the three events that we are receiving. You can see sending a post request which was successful 200 to this endpoint localhost /API/webhook. So if we go to our here, you can see the data that is being printed back. So this is the payload that Stripe is sending to us. You can see it's kind of is in a raw format, so we can't actually read it properly. So a lot of things is being sent here. If we just try to go through, you can see the payment method is being sent, the email is being sent, a lot of data is being sent back by the Stripe. Alright, so you can see the object, the event, a lot of information, amount refund, which is none. All these are coming from Stripe and request of data. That's the payload. Alright, that's fine. So let's head back to that endpoint. Heading back to this endpoint, if you go back to the documentation, out of filling others, then you say, look at what it says. It says you see this checkout the session to complete, which we see that already. So what we need to do, we need to verify the event that is coming from Stripe. So this is where the issue is. If you had used an API endpoint, maybe an API view, the problem is it says anyone can post data to your event handler. Before processing an event, always verify that it comes from Stripe before trusting it. You see, the official Stripe library has a built-in support for verifying webhook events, which you will update your event handler with. Alright, now for us to actually verify the payload that is coming from Stripe, this method of verifying is expecting the raw post data as our payload. Now, if we use an API endpoint, which our payload will now be request of data. If you check the request of data that is coming from Stripe, the reason what I'm telling you now take me a lot of time to figure out because I was having issues. My verification was not going through. I was having payload verification failed. And you read about the request of data that is coming from every post request. It says return a post content of the request body. Alright, so this return a post content. So once the payload is paused, the signature verifier cannot verify the payload. So there becomes a problem. For it to be able to verify this payload, the payload needs to be in the raw form, which is the request of body directly. So that's why we couldn't use an API view. Because anytime we use request of data, it actually pours the content into a JSON data. Alright, we just paste. So we need to make some adjustments. So we get the signature either from request.meta.http_stripe signature. We set our event to none at first. So we try and get the event from Stripe by setting stripe.webhook.construct event. Here we pass in the payload which is the raw post data coming from Stripe, and we're passing the signature header, we're passing our endpoint secret. So we need to provide this endpoint secret. We don't have the endpoint secret now. So get our endpoint secret. If you come to your CLI, you can get it from your CLI here. The endpoint secret is your webhook signing secret, which is this value here. You can also get it from your dashboard. If you go to developer, you go to webhook, you see where you can get it, but you can also get it here. So copy, you see the value, which is our signing secret. So once we have this, or better still, we can set this in our settings. I think that is more better. So let me quickly set this in our settings, cut this out. Alright, so we have this and paste it in our settings file. We can and pass it into this event. So except there's a value error, probably payload has a value error, we want to return the status of 400, which is bad request. Then it says stripe.error.signature verifier verification error. We want to return an HTTP status 400. Alright, so if this payload would have was paused or into adjacent content, we have this signature verification error because it can't verify the payload as a JSON object. Let's head back to our documentation and see what next to do. So we need to fulfill our order now. They're handling the checkout and session the complete event. Once we have this event, we want to grab the session data. We can grab this to grab the session, which is event.data.object. So we can we can print out the session to actually see us by Stripe. And here is where we can probably send, once we have the session, we can send an email and probably also create maybe a payment history. Create a payment history. Alright, so those are the two things that we can do. So first of all, let's see the data that is being returned in this session. Alright, so that we'll see. Remember, we passed in the email when we are making payment, so we can grab that email from the session and send an email to that particular email. Then create maybe a payment history. So let's quickly set up a simple model to receive a payment history. If we head back, so let's try and check out again. Alright, so we have a successful payment again. So let's check the, alright, you can see the session and object that was sent back to us upon completion of the successful payment. So in here, we can see the customer email is not being set. Alright, but we have email here. Alright, customer details is here. We have customers details, though the address is not passed, but we have this email. So we'll make use of this email because we want to send an email to this customer. So we can get that from customer details. And let's see other information. We can see the product ID that has been stored in the metadata. Alright, so let's see how we can use these values. First of all, let's create this payment history model. So this will probably have a user, though we don't have user authentication system set up, but we can just put that there. Product name. So this is our basic payment history model. Alright, so let's save this. So that's about the model. So in here, we can grab the values that we want. You also need to get the product ID because we need to query for the product. Remember, we set this metadata in the creating of session in here. Alright, we call the send mail function, which we need to import. Alright, so once we import the send mail function, and then lastly, we need the from email. Put any email. So let me just put my email here. That's that. So we need to construct a message. That's why I'm using this string so that we can bring in the URL. So thanks for purchase. Thanks for your purchase. Your order is ready. can say download is this. So we need to get the product and get the URL from the product. We have the product ID, so we can simply query for the product here. All right. So that will give us our product. So here we can say product.book URL. So this will give us the URL of the book in our email, and the recipient email, which is the customer email, and the admin email, which is sending the email. Whereas so it's just a basic send email, you can construct yours better in a real e-commerce system. So let's create the payment history. Once we send the email, we want to create the payment history. All right. So that will create a payment history for us. If we have more information, we can put that on. So that's all. So we send email to the customer and we create a payment history for that customer. So this is what we do. So we save the, so that's that. So for us to actually send email, we need to configure email settings. So I'm not going to be doing that right now because that is not what the tutorial is all about. I'll just allow us to test our email through the console. We have the Django console email settings. So that's what we're going to be using to test our email. We just paste in the email settings, and that is just the backend.console.email backend. So this will actually send our email to our console. So what we do now, we just quickly create checkout, click the checkout, pay. Our order was completed, an email was sent. Our web. Alright, you can see we were able to send an email to the user. We can get the subject of the email because we are receiving the email in the console. Alright, so you can see we have subject payment successful from admin to site to this, the payment history. Alright, so let's check if we have the payment history. Alright, we have one payment history. There's no user, the product was specified, and we have is paid status. We have one Stripe, and let's check our payment. Alright, we are receiving the payment by that user, customer, and we can create a payment history for that product. Alright, so let's take us to the end of this very first video. In our next video, we'll see how we can implement the custom payment flow. If you head over to making payments, online payments, in our next tutorial, we'll see how we can implement the custom payment flow. Alright guys, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. See you guys in the next video.